Welcome back, warrior. We are reading Alma chapter 40. We're so excited about being right on time. Okay. We're just going to the Red-Headed Hostess right now to download the pages. And we're still with Alma, and he's counseling his son, Reuniting, talking with him because he needs the most help, seems like. Okay, it says, Christ bringeth to pass the resurrection of all men. The righteous dead go to paradise, and the wicked to outer darkness, to await the day of their resurrection. All things shall be restored to their proper and perfect frame in the resurrection. Okay, so he's talking to him about hope and about what's going to happen. So that's pretty awesome to kind of give him that background. Okay, and it says, And now, my son, I have somewhat more to say unto thee than what I said unto thy brother. For behold, have ye not observed the steadiness of thy brother, his faithfulness, and his... Oh, just kidding. This is verse 39, or chapter 39. We're on chapter 40. Don't worry, I did read the right chapter summary, but I was like, wait, this is him again talking about his... Okay, so I'm glad he did not compare him to Helaman and Shiblon again. So he says, Now, my son, here is somewhat more I would say unto thee, for I perceive that my mind is worried concerning the resurrection of the dead. That thy mind is worried concerning about the resurrection of the dead. That makes sense, because when you have committed sin and you're not sure where you stand with God, you wonder about these things. Okay, so verse 2, Behold, I say unto you that there is no resurrection, or I would say, in other words, that this mortal does not put on immortality, this corruption does not put on incorruption until after the coming of Christ. So there's no resurrection prior to Jesus Christ, okay? 3, Behold, he bringeth to pass the resurrection of the dead. But behold, my son, the resurrection is not yet. Now I unfold unto you a mystery. Nevertheless, there are many mysteries which are kept, that no one knoweth, no one knoweth them, save God himself. But I show unto you one thing, which I have inquired diligently of God, that I might know. That is concerning the resurrection. So, like, when will the resurrection be, right? Behold, there is a time appointed. Sorry, I have like a little zit or something, and it's in there, and it's totally bugging. It's like that painful one. Anyway, ignore. Behold, there is a time appointed that all shall come forth from the dead. Now when this time cometh, no one knows, but God knoweth the time which is appointed. Now whether there shall be no one time, or a second time, or a third time, that men shall come forth from the dead, it mattereth not, for God knoweth all these things. And it sufficeth me to know that this is the case, that there is a time appointed that all shall rise from the dead. So he's just like, okay, there's just this one time. Like, there's going to be a time for each person, basically. But we don't know exactly when each one will happen. So Alma has observed that Reuniting's mind is worried about the resurrection. And so Alma teaches Reuniting very clearly about the resurrection and when it will occur. Understanding the resurrection can help Reuniting comprehend the seriousness of his sins. For the righteous, the doctrine of the resurrection brings hope and peace. But for the wicked, they learn that their sins will bring everlasting consequences, and that is hard to take. Yeah, it makes sense. So Alma teaches about when the resurrection will occur, and there are some things that Alma knows and some things he doesn't know. He is learning and piecing these mysteries together. Alma explains there will be no resurrection prior to Christ, because he bringeth to pass the resurrection of the dead. So no man or woman will rise from the dead as a resurrected person until after Christ. And then Alma goes on to teach that there is a time appointed that all shall come forth from the dead. So, like, appointed means like fixed or set or established. And God has an exact plan for the resurrection. Even though man does not know the exact time, God actually does. And then Alma explains that there are some things he does know um, whether the resurrection will occur one time or at different times. But he says it doesn't matter because it doesn't. Those details do not change anything. The resurrection will occur. He just does not know God's exact plan. And I think that's true. Like, I remember asking my bishop at some point, I think because of my parents' divorce and things, Satan had convinced me that my family was broken and I didn't have a family anymore. And I think that's maybe natural for children to believe, and that's why there's so much trauma behind divorce and things. So if you are getting divorced or not, explain to your kids the whole system, right? Explain to them this resurrection. Explain to them how eternal families work, to the best that you know, right? Anyway, and so I asked my bishop, I was like, well, what happens to me because my parents got divorced, And I'm like, where am I going to go? Right? You feel so alone as a teenager. You don't want to feel alone in eternity. And so I think that is why I was so concerned. And he said to me, it is not relevant to your salvation. So just keep choosing the right and doing the right things. And the Lord will make everything work out for your good. And I'm just like, that's not the answer that I want. Right? And because I was like, who am I going to be with? Am I going to be with my mom or am I going to be with my dad? And that was like so confusing to me. And he was like, you don't have to worry about it. And so because he told me not to worry about it, I was like, fine, well, I will just worry about my own family then, like looking forward to getting married and having my own family. And then I won't have to worry about my parents. And that's why we're here. Because I was so worried about where I would go and I didn't want to be lonely, right? And so naturally I'm like, fine, I guess that's a good enough answer, right? But I needed to know that I for sure wasn't going to be alone. And so I was like, well, I guess I just have to look forward to having my own family. And then I won't have any questions. I have to have my own eternal family. And then I won't have questions about where I'm going to be. Well, surprise, surprise. We still have questions. But it's okay because now I do know that everything will work out, Okay. So, verse 6 to 11. Now there must needs be a space betwixt the time of death and the time of resurrection. So just between time you die and between time you get resurrected. And now I would inquire what becometh of the souls of men from this time of death to the time appointed for the resurrection. Now whether there is more than one time appointed for men to rise, it mattereth not, right? Like it doesn't matter. But maybe. For all do not die at once, and this mattereth not. All is as one day with God, and time only is measured unto men. And I'm still learning to measure time. Therefore, this is a time appointed unto men, that they shall rise from the dead, and there is a space between the time of death and the resurrection. And now concerning this space of time, what becometh of the souls of men is the thing which I have inquired diligently of the Lord to know, and this is the thing of which I do know. And when the time cometh, when all shall rise, then shall they know that God knoweth all the times which are appointed unto man. Hold on. Okay, and now concerning the state of the soul between death and the resurrection, behold, it has been made known unto me by an angel that the spirit of all men, as soon as they are departed from this mortal body, yea, the spirits of all men, whether they be good or evil, are taken home to that God who gave them life. Okay. Whoops, my camera is a little off, so I just got a new case. So it's going to take some adjusting here. Okay, here we go. It says, Alma then teaches about what happens to souls between death and resurrection. He explains that there is a space of time between when a person dies and when he or she is resurrected. Then he explains what we refer to as the spirit world in verse 11. Alma says that both, oh, thanks. Where did they go? Okay, so Alma says that both good and evil spirits are taken home to that God who gave them life. President Joseph Fielding Smith explained what this means. These words of Alma 40:11-14, as I understand them, do not intend to convey the thought that all spirits immediately go back into the presence of God, taken home to God. Compare this to Ecclesiastes 12, chapter 12, verse 7, simply means that their mortal existence has come to an end and they have returned to the world of spirits, where they are assigned to a place according to their works, which the just or with the just or with the unjust, there to await the resurrection. End quote. That's President Joseph Fielding Smith, Answers to Gospel Questions, chapter 2, maybe? Okay, so verses 12-13, or 12 and 13. And then shall it come to pass that the spirits of those who are righteous are received into a state of happiness, which is called paradise, a state of rest, a state of peace, where they shall rest from all their troubles, from all care and sorrow. And then shall it come to pass that the spirits of the wicked, yea, who are evil, for behold, they have no part nor portion of the Spirit of the Lord, for behold, they choose evil works rather than good. Therefore, the spirit of the devil did enter into them and take possession of their house. And these shall be cast out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth, and this because of their own iniquity, being led captive by the will of the devil. So here, Alma explains the different states that spirits will experience in the spirit world. There is a place for the righteous, which is a place called paradise. That's where I want to go. Sounds like paradise. And a place for the wicked that today we often call prison. These are both temporary states where spirits await the resurrection. In verse 12, we learn that the righteous will be in a state of rest. This does not mean that they are not doing anything, but rather they are resting from all their troubles, care, and sorrow. They are no longer in mortality. They no longer need to worry about death, sickness, and other mortal problems. Sounds kind of nice, though. Then in verse 13, we learn what it's like in spirit prison. Alma explains the state of the souls there. They are in a great state of suffering, and that suffering is brought on because of their own iniquity. And in verse 13, Alma uses the word outer darkness. The Book of Mormon Seminary Teacher Manual explains, quote, when Alma used the phrase outer darkness, he did not refer to the final state of Satan and those who are damned. He referred to the state, of the wicked between the time of their death and the time of their resurrection. Today, we usually refer to this state as spiritual prison, or as spirit prison. And this is the Book of Mormon Seminary Manual, lesson 97. Okay, verse 14. Now this is a state of the souls of the wicked, yea, in darkness, and the state of awful, fearful looking for the fiery indignation of the wrath of God upon them. Thus they remain in this state, as well as the righteous in paradise, until the time of the resurrection. So here Alma teaches that the spirit world is a temporary state. Let's read. Temporary state where spirits will await the resurrection. So spirits do not go there to their eternal dwelling place right after death. And the resurrection is a real and literal thing that will happen at a certain time. These are things that are often argued in the Christian world. Does a soul go straight to heaven, or is there an intermediate place? Is the resurrection literal? Will man be resurrected? If so, when? Alma and other prophets have given us very clear teaching on these things. President Nelson taught us this. Some Fastidiously? Okay, that's a new word. Let's start the quote over. I think it's fastidiously. Okay. Quote, some fastidiously state that nothing is as permanent as death. Not so. The grip of physical death is temporary. It began with the fall of Adam. It ended with the atonement of Jesus Christ. The waiting period in paradise is temporary. It is temporary too. It ends with the resurrection, end quote. And that's April 1992 General Conference, President Nelson, or Elder Russell M. Nelson, back in 1992, right? Okay, that's a new word, that facetiously. Verse 15 to 17. Now there are some that have understood this state of happiness and this state of misery of the soul before the resurrection was a first resurrection. Yea, I admit, it may be termed a resurrection, the raising of the spirit of the soul, and this their consignation to happiness or misery according to the words which have been spoken. And behold, again, it hath been spoken that there is a first resurrection, a resurrection of all those who have been, or who are, or who shall be, down to the resurrection of Christ from the dead. Now we do not suppose that this first resurrection, which is spoken of in this manner, can be the resurrection of the souls of their consignation to happiness or misery. Yea, ye cannot suppose that this is what it means. Okay. So I'm going to clarify some doctrine here. Some have thought that spirits going to the spirit world was a resurrection, and Alma admits that it could be called that. The word resurrection means raising up, and you could say that the soul being delivered to the spirit world could be considered that, but the resurrection which he is speaking of is not about the soul going to the spirit world. Okay. Verse 18 to 21. Behold, I say unto you, nay, but it meaneth the reuniting of the soul. Why does this smell like cookies? Right? Nobody's actually making cookies right now, but it smells like cookies. It occasionally smells like cookies in our house, but it's so funny because I don't actually have cookies baking anywhere. I haven't baked cookies in, I don't know, months. Anyways, the reuniting of the soul with the body of those from the days of Adam down to the resurrection of Christ. This is resurrection. Now, whether the souls and the bodies of those whom has been spoken shall all be reunited at once, the wicked as well as the righteous, I do not say. Let it suffice that I say that they all come forth, or in the other words, their resurrection cometh to pass before the resurrection of those who die after the resurrection of Christ. Okay, hold on. Okay, verse 20. Now, my son, I do not say that their resurrection cometh at the resurrection of Christ, but behold, I give it as my opinion that the souls and the bodies are reunited of the righteous at the resurrection of Christ and his ascension into heaven. But whether it be at his resurrection or after, I do not say. But this much I say, that there is a space between death and the resurrection of the body, and a state of the soul in happiness or in misery, until the time which is appointed of God, that the dead shall come forth and be reunited, both soul and body, and be brought to stand before God and be judged according to their works. Okay, so here Alma teaches this doctrine very clearly, which leaves nothing to debate about. The resurrection is the reuniting of the soul with the body. Then Alma addresses a detail of which he does not know of for certain, but gives us his opinion, which is a correct opinion. Okay. Do all resurrected bodies come forth at once, meaning will the wicked and the righteous be resurrected at the same time? Alma answers his opinion in verse 20, that the souls of the righteous will be resurrected right around Christ's resurrection. On this topic, the Bible Dictionary teaches all will not be raised to the same glory in the resurrection, nor will all come forth at the same time. Christ was first. The righteous have precedence over the wicked and come forth in the first resurrection, whereas the unrepentant sinners come forth in the last resurrection. Notice how they said first and last, but it doesn't say anything about middle, second, third, fifth, 10th. You know what I mean? So there's that. Okay, in verses 22 to 26 says, yea, this bringeth about the restoration of those things of which has been spoken by the mouths of the prophets. Oh, you know what, this is a good exercise. I'm just going like this. Okay. The The soul, wait, no. Yea, this bringeth about the restoration of those things of which has been spoken by the mouths of the prophets. The soul shall be restored to the body, and the body to the soul. Yea, every limb and joint shall be restored to its body. Yea, even a hair of the head shall not be lost, but all things shall be restored to their proper and perfect frame. And now, my son, this is the restoration of which has been spoken by the mouths of the prophets, and then shall the righteous shine forth in the kingdom of God. But behold, an awful death cometh upon the wicked, for they die as to things pertaining to things of righteousness. For they are unclean, and no unclean thing can inherit the kingdom of God. But they are cast out and consigned to partake of the fruits of their labors or their works, which have been evil, and they drink the dregs of a bitter cup. So the resurrection is kind of a restoration of things, right? Elder Holland taught, before this, says these verses contain some critical doctrines about the resurrection that can give our families an eternal perspective about their choices. The resurrection is not just a reuniting of the spirit and body, but it is a restoration. It is a restoration or a renewal / recovery of the soul to its body, and it will be perfected. It will be a perfected body. But in the next chapter, we'll see that the restoration will only restore good for good and evil for evil. So the state of the soul is restored, but is not changed. And that's important to note. Elder Holland taught this. Alma also knew, as did other Book of Mormon prophets, that the doctrine of restoration accompanied the doctrine of the resurrection. The spiritual impact of that doctrine of restoration is sobering for those who may have believed that Christ's atonement and the resurrection would somehow bring something more that was deserved. Alma made it very clear that if our works are good in this life and the desires of our hearts are good, then in the resurrection we will be restored to that which is good. But by the same token, if our works are evil, then our reward will be the restoration of evil in the resurrection. End quote. Oh, snap. That sounds crazy. Okay, so that's from Elder Jeffrey R. Holland in the book called Christ and the New Covenant. Okay, we're going to read our Read It, Live It, and that is going to be it for today. Okay, here it is. Well, there's two actually. Let's see, this one and this one. Okay, so let's read the first one. Alma is fascinated by the many mysteries of God, but he has learned to focus on just one thing in his prayers. So this is from verse 3. I already forgot what verse 3 said, but it's fine. What is your one thing? Inquire diligently. I like that. Yeah, because he says, but I show you one thing which I have inquired diligently of God, that I might know. So yeah. And it was concerning the resurrection. What is that one thing? Like, we all have like wonders and questions. Like, what do we focus on studying the most? Okay, and then Alma 40, the other Read It, Live It is, Alma talks about a time when the righteous will shine forth in the kingdom of God. Start practicing now. Shine. That's cute. I like it. Okay, until Alma chapter 41, stay strong, warrior.